What's up, Mr. Chris?
What's up, Chris?
Well, we've had quite the eventful week. Trump lectured the world, hyped up a sweet memo, and made it home in time to clap for heroes and himself in the State of the Union. Chris, just what is this world coming to? So, let's start off with Davos, whatever. Trump went on to lecture the rest of the world about America first. Davos, the globalist headquarters. My personal take. I appreciate the message compared to previous ones, like previous administrations. I like his nod to nationalism and open for business sign on America. I like kind of how he chided over-regulating bureaucrats and denounced regulations as a stealth tax. He condemned centralized economic planning, which is great, but also weird if the rumors are true about him nationalizing 5G. But overall, I like the message that he brought to Davos, and it was kind of cool to see him, remind the great global controllers about the middleman. And I don't know, it was just nice. It was good, man, especially compared to the previous administration, where they were kind of all beans and no franks when it came to asserting themselves on the global stage.
Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of see what that ends up leading to with Trump, because a little bit too early in his tenure as president to see how well his promises play out. But I'll tell you one thing, like, as a libertarian, you'd think that Tom Woods wrote his speech for Davos. I mean, that was some libertarian porn, I'll tell you. Except for a couple little things, especially like anything to do with kind of foreign war stance and acting tough on Iran and North Korea. But man, like the stuff that he was talking about with the regulations, and I'd really like to fact check him on this maybe at some point, that he said that it was up to 22 regulations that he's gotten rid of for every one that he's created. It's kind of verging on an unbelievable number. I mean, maybe it's true. Well, we'll see. Like, and I wouldn't even trust something like Snopes to give a proper fact check on that. But we'll see how the Federal Register looks when they start to release those numbers for this past year.
Totally agreed, man. Totally agreed. I have yet to fact check anything myself, but God, what I wouldn't give to just look all them in the face and tell them, like, look, there's bureaucrats in here, and they're the non-elected officials, and they regulate, and all that is a stealth tax. And it was just, I don't know, to me it was beautiful coming out, kind of reining them in, and especially when it came to national sovereignty. That was great, because like our previous administration, Obama went up to like the UN in December of 2016 and kind of like, I guess, condemned national sovereignty big time, and was kind of making concessions to like an international collective at the same time, basically forfeiting a lot of our internet rights to the UN.
Yeah, he was kind of always in a mother may I situation with the UN with almost any decision he wanted to make, and it was always kind of weird.
Definitely, man. There's even it wasn't Ash Carter. It wasn't his Secretary of Defense either, but they went and tried to lecture Congress and tell them, like, look, the UN actually has the power to take us to war as well. And it was a lot of senators spoke out against it, but I clearly remember Sessions, before he was ever in the big limelight, Sessions just laying into him about it. And that was the sight to see too. But man, it's a stark contrast between two different administrations. It's nice to see them, even though it's still a concession to a collective, like national sovereignty. It's still kind of a concession to a collective, in my opinion. It's still not a concession to the international collective, which is a step in the right direction, I believe. I kind of like that stuff.
Yeah, and like he pointed to it quite a bit in his speech. How? Let me try to think of the words that he used. He did say America first, but he also said, but that doesn't mean America alone. I thought that sounded pretty good, you know, for a soundbite at least. That's the thing. With these speeches, you never really know what's going on. All right, so the Democrats and even some Republicans often give Trump this sort of credit that I don't think he deserves of like trying to play 4D chess. And sometimes they even add other numbers even above that 5G chess. Oh, you know, the hyperbole gets crazy. But I think that that's kind of a bad analogy because chess like implies, you know, there's a winner and a loser. It's like, you know, it's a battle between foes. I don't think that's the kind of person that Trump really is. I mean, granted, when he gets in these like kind of Twitter dust-ups, it'll be like the kind of bully effect. But for the most part, the man's an entertainer. And the closest kind of analogy I can think of to if he's doing that sort of thing, like trying to make moves one way to enact like some, you know, other thing, I think it's more like magician tricks, like, you know, Penn and Teller, stuff like that, where the object is to entertain a bunch of people, and also the object is to perform one task, but to do it in a way that nobody sees you doing it, and to kind of have your smoke and mirrors and everything. And I kind of get this vibe that that's what he's trying to do. And the problem is, from our perspective, it'll be the end of his term, at least the end of this first term, before we see the trick actually played out. And that's what like both kind of assures me and worries me at the same time, because I think all the stuff we're getting hung up on, you know, in the short term with him is the what was the word they used in the Christopher Nolan movie, the prestige, you know, and we're not seeing what the actual trick is. And the anticipation is killing me. At least me, dude. I love the build up because, like, to me, one of the definitions of a great leader is to make somebody enjoy something that they genuinely wouldn't want to do in the first place, you know, and kind of like they're doing it with a smile on before they even know it. And we've kind of seen it, you know, with the whole tariffs game, and now China's moving back over and making factories over here too. So and just like you said, I don't really see a winner or loser in that. I just see like kind of what Trump's shooting for, more like bilateral deals, mutually beneficial, where it isn't like, okay, we're going to all buy into this collective, and, you know, if you have this, and that, you're not a part of the majority, or you're not a part of the necessity, so you'll fall by the wayside. Whereas in bilateral deals, it's mutually beneficial. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff, and that nothing brings me more joy than seeing Trump get up to the rest of the world and almost invoking Jordan Peterson, kind of telling them to clean their own room, you know, when it comes to that national sovereignty. Like, look, you know, you take care of your shit and you'll take care of everybody else in turn if you do that. You know, I love that kind of stuff. I thought it went over really good. Yeah, I hope it works out the way he kind of laid it out there. It was definitely a lot less sort of a, you know, a pushy nature that we have come to expect from him. You know, both this speech and I'm sure we'll address later the State of the Union. It was, you know, people have been asking this whole time, when's Trump actually going to appear presidential? I think he's starting to get into that kind of step. Of course, you know, everybody in the media is still going to harp on all the littlest things and take those things too far, and that become the news cycle instead of all the better things that came out of it. But I think that goes right back into the whole kind of smoke and mirrors thing. I'm sure he just throws that kind of stuff in there just to, you know, kind of move the news narrative in the direction that he wants, so that there's no focus on the things that he's actually trying to get done, and he doesn't want, you know, all these things getting in the way. Yes, sir. Totally agreed, man. And what you say goes to heart too. Though we've seen his intentions, we're still kind of waiting on that product, and we can't fully make a judgment until then. I totally agree. And my bad too. I know I told you we'd start off with the State of the Union. I kind of jumped boats. Oh, that's fine. Like they kind of are one and the same almost, because what are they, a week apart? And he kind of parroted a lot of his Davos speech in the State of the Union. For one thing I want to get into, why do we have this State of the Union thing anyway? It started out as it would just be a letter to Congress that the president would send on what he would, kind of like to see, and the problems that we're facing, and kind of just to start a dialogue between the president and Congress to kind of get things moving. And since the beginning of the radio days, and definitely getting worse with television, it's become just this huge thing of pomp and circumstance that kind of takes away from the real purpose of it.
Totally agreed. Those I kind of see it as an ode to excellence. It can be totally taken as like, just a big partisan award ceremony, pretty much, It's kind of what it feels like too, is you got one side clapping, the other side all pissed off, and it's just kind of, well, look what happened this year, and look, this guy's a hero because it was on my watch, and he's standing up here. Not to take anything whatsoever from each individual there that was mentioned, but I can see how it can be taken as that is like a little partisan pony show,
Yeah, and that's pretty much what politics has become these days. Is it's not really about doing anything; it's about talking about doing things. And I think that this whole State of the Union, what is the other thing that they do? The press correspondence dinner, all that crap like that. It's just a reason for them to get around a microphone, pat themselves on the back, clap for each other, and just spout a bunch of usual nonsense that doesn't ever come to fruition. But I will give Trump credit for the State of the Union. He really didn't lay out a bunch of stuff that he was saying the government is going to fix. I mean, he spent most of the speech talking about things that the country has done that didn't really have much to do with the government in the first half. And that was one thing I noticed that was kind of a big difference between the kind of State of the Unions that Obama would give and Trump would give. Granted, the language difference is a lot different.
Oh yeah.
There's no denying that. But like in Trump's speech, he spent I think it was about half the speech basically just saying, this is what you all have done, and it really didn't spend much time on what I have done, as himself or whatever, and where like Obama would have been like, the whole speech would have been, here's all these problems, here's what we need to do, and by we he meant the government, or by all you people, everyone except for me, basically, and that was something I found that was quite different.
Yeah, and to me it seemed like the previous administration always kind of preceded their accomplishments with I's, like I did this and I did that, and as pompous and arrogant as Trump is, and he totally is pompous and arrogant, and he's nowhere near as silver tongue as Obama. I did hear a lot of we's come out of there, which is that's another refreshing thing to hear, is a lot of like acknowledgments that we're all kind of in this together. I mean, don't kid him though. He did reserve some of that time for lobbying. I know he was pushing for infrastructure bills in the speech, and he did kind of switch a Democratic slogan up on them and told them, us Americans are dreamers as well, and that kind of, I can see that throwing a wrench in their whole, tear-jerking plea, and label them this, and it'll change everybody's mind. Whether or not I like the dreamer stuff or not, I see what they do, with the word games and stuff, and it was kind of neat just to see it get thrown back on them, even though, it goes no further than that with me, because, of course, just like you mentioned earlier, there's intent and product, He's been throwing them for a loop just on intent alone. They're believing it like it's product, like with all this DACA stuff. I mean, he kind of busted them out and had them, standing there with their privates in their hands when he offered DACA, and they still refused it. But I mean, otherwise, yeah, the State of the Union I mean, it wasn't bad. To me, it was mainly just like him kind of honoring the accomplishments of the nation as a whole and kind of honoring the individual heroes of the year and stuff. I mean, it was nice. It was kind of a come together moment.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, the second half of the speech definitely had more of the kind of token promises that you would get from a State of the Union, but they were kind of more subdued than definitely I would expect from Trump, but really than we've really gotten in a long time as far as any president giving a State of the Union, because there was the infrastructure thing. There was he did kind of lay out kind of half-assedly a dreamer fix where it would be in 12 years somebody that's been good and has proven that they're going to be able to contribute to society, they'd have the path to citizenship or whatever, which by the way, smart move putting it off for 12 years, because then he can at least get what he wants done with the wall and all that kind of stuff. You know, whether you're for it or against it, it's a smarter political play than Reagan did with the amnesty now and like all the other, you know, concrete fixes later that never happened. And so he at least learned from that mistake. And then one thing that did bother me though is he doubled down on the drug war with the talking about the heroin overdoses and saying that the government is somehow going to fix this. They've been trying to fix it for 30 years and it's only gotten to this point after spending trillions of dollars on it. I mean, you know, I mean, what can we expect with Jeff Sessions as our Attorney General? But, you know, these guys got to let this go at some point, you'd think.
You would think, man. It's high time we're done with that shit, you know? And that DACA, that's one reason, probably kicking the can, you know, putting it out 12 years is probably one reason to pass the buck on. But I know another reason is we sit at like $1 million per year admittance cap, and they've floated like a 200,000 number to displace 200,000 of the legal ones, of the legal immigrants in line, and allow DACA participants in their stead. And I think that 12 years was another way to like kind of draw out that number. So instead of like taking
I see,
whatever the number is, like, so it's like 0.8 million to, I've heard as high as like 3.6 million are participating in DACA, and instead just dropping them 1 year full amnesty, they chose to like kind of like drag it out and go through and vet, just like you said, you know, see criminal past or not.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do for that sort of thing. Let's see. Well, here, the foreign policy stuff was a kind of double-edged sword for me, because he did say he wanted, you know, more funding and more effort in the foreign wars and military aspect of things. Supposedly we have ISIS on the, you know, circling the drain over there in Iraq and Syria. I doubt it. It's probably another one of those things where, yeah, they're circling the drain until we pull back 1 inch and then they pop up again, and then they'll use that as an excuse for 20 more years of war over there, which is another thing, just like the drug war. It's going nowhere and we've got to just like get out of there. But yeah, but at least he sounded more measured when he barely, did he even mention Iran? If he did, I didn't catch it. And then, which is good, because I don't want to see yet another theater of war open in the Middle East over there too, especially with a country that, you know, hasn't gone to war with another country in so long. And then also, he mentioned North Korea, and he talked a little tough on North Korea, saying that a goal of his is to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, but he didn't really, you know, give any of the, you know, kicking ass statements or you know, fire and fury, for lack of a better term, or anything else that would kind of make you think that he was going to make a move over there anytime soon.
You're right, old aggro Trump definitely didn't show up to the old State of the Union. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely different, man. It's hard to tell, like, at what point is he just like cleaning up a mess over there, and, you know, like, that's what my dumbass wants to believe, since I'm like initially a fan of his. And I'm like, well, they requested 40,000 troops and he's bringing like 5 to 10. Okay, like maybe he's just going over there to clean up all their bullshit COINTEL, like previous stuff. But dude, honestly, my guess is as good as any other sorry bastards. For all I know, the whole military industrial complex has another honey hole, about to spawn in Iran or something. For all I know, and that could be the next show, just like you said, for the next 20 years. But to me, I mean, I'm naive enough to force myself to want to believe that he's still cleaning up a mess. But I mean, it could go anyway at this point, and I probably wouldn't be surprised.
That's definitely true. I mean, we just have such an entrenched lot of, I guess you can still call them neocons, but yeah, the guys like the John McCain's and Lindsey Graham's that are, on the public face of everything. But once you go inside the White House, inside all the staffs and everything, that's almost all there is these neocons that want to excuse these massive wars for every little tiny bit of security that's not even real, because we're still just as in danger after all this stuff, if not more, than we have been after all this foreign conflict. And it's really starting to it's been out of hand for a long time, and hopefully he's done with a few people, is he'll let them say their stuff and make them feel like they're being heard, but then still does his own thing. And that's one of the few things that I really like about Trump, is that, if he doesn't really believe in your opinion, he's just not going to go with it.
Yeah, and then conversely too, if he does like your opinion, he will go with it. Like old Rand in the tax plan, he let him put in a lot of input on that. And then Rand again with immigration, he was the one that first proposed the 200,000 for every million a year. And even though they cut that back a little bit, but I want to say that plan originated with Mr. Rand Paul. It was kind of cool seeing Trump like actually listen to him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That reminds me. He did mention reforming the prison system too, which that's amazing. I'm totally for that.
Dude, there's all kinds of little stuff that he just floats in where I'm like, wait, hold on, rewind, dude. Yeah, elaborate a little more. Like after the election, when you mentioned going after the Federal Reserve, I was like, dude, you didn't even campaign on that. Hold on, wait, what?
I will believe that when I see it. That is not going to happen. That is one of the most untouchable agencies, and it's not even a government agency. It's a private company that the government just gives all these protections to and this monopoly authority to, and it's absolutely insane. But they are so much at the head of the sword with, like, if you believe in any sort of deep state, these guys are it. And so I think that, there's a lot more things that are going to be put in front of going after the Federal Reserve, I would guarantee you, because they can ruin his presidency real quick.
And I can't say they haven't already. I mean, look at how many times have they adjusted rates, or how many times did they last year? I want to say like 5 to 6 times, as opposed to when they're trying to keep artificial lows in the years before. I mean, I can't say they're specifically trying to ruin him or anything. They could just be accommodating for a growing economy, but it's still, like, it could totally be perceived as, oh yeah, they're actually trying to manually drive things down themselves,
I think if they were at this point, they would have done something more drastic than the quarter points.
True.
And because, obviously, if that was their goal, it hasn't worked, because the economy has been getting better and better rather than worse and worse. But man, with that power they have, they could easily just flip that switch and screw them over and screw everyone over. Because one thing to think about, while we're running, a $20 trillion plus debt and have a deficit of around $1 trillion a year right now, getting the interest rate up to even a historic low of 3% would mean like a third of our budget each year would just be servicing the debt. That is before we'd spend $1 on anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they could fuck us pretty bad if they wanted to.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed. It's kind of phenomenal to think about it like that, man.
Yeah. But the one thing to think about is their own interests are the things that are holding them off from doing that, because if they were to do that, they hurt themselves in the pocketbook too. So they really have to be put in a corner before they'd go that bad. But, I would not put it above them.
We need to isolate them and shut shit down. Just shut it all down, yep. Mr. Riley. Let's
Bitcoin,
see.
Man. That's what's really going to take away their power.
Let's see our third and final topic, the good old memo. The lovely memo. The one we've been hearing about, the one they've been hyping up, the juiciest, baddest thing to come since Batman 3. They've been hyping this thing up bad.
Yeah, I keep on hearing it everywhere, and I'm sure. Of course, I know all about the memo. I'm on the show here. But just in case anybody at home doesn't know what the memo is, why don't you explain it?
All right, let me break it down. This is coming from a dummy, so take it with a grain of salt. But the House Permanent Select Intel Committee on Intelligence has put together a memo from several sources. These sources include FISA court reviews, mainly pertaining to when they've actually breached those laws. Another source is communication between several agents, and the final source is notes on previous investigations. Basically, the Inspector General has had an ongoing review of handling of previous investigations, specifically Clinton's investigation. It started, I want to say, January 17th, I think, about 3 days before Trump's inauguration. Basically, the Inspector General is like internal affairs for like CIA and FBI for the ABC agencies. And he was called upon to investigate any mishandling of Clinton's investigation. Well, he's been releasing his findings in parts, and his first part came out, and that was where we heard about the one FBI agent who was having an affair with the girl from the DOJ, and they were passing texts back and forth about whatever insurance policy and basically hate against Trump and a lot of stuff that people have passed off as jokes, like mentions of secret societies and whatnot. I don't know. I don't really entertain that. But basically, after the first release of the first part of the Inspector General's review, the House Permanent Select Committee requested a bunch of information, like FISA. Really, they wanted to see the FISA warrant into how the whole investigation started with Trump, but they requested all the info they could on it, and Nunes put together a memo of all the infractions, whatever committed, and made a little bullet point list of all the confidential information, and wants to make it public to everybody, not just to certain people, but to everybody. And this is kind of, being turned into a big partisan gig, and a lot of people are passing it off as just like rumor, like he's going to come out and say, like these people should be arrested or these people did that. When, to me personally, it looks like he's just trying to inform as many people as possible of what happened. Granted, I understand he's partisan and stuff, and at this point, everything is supposition until we actually get some concrete evidence. And there's three big things that me personally I'm looking for right now, and none of them is the memo. The first one is the FISA warrant. I would love to see what started, because you can't just go start surveilling an American citizen. You have to have a surveillance. There is no such thing as a general warrant in a federal court, and especially when it comes to like FISA stuff, you actually have to have. There's something called the AVP, and that's an asset verification process. You actually even have to get your sources vetted. Like there's a lot of shit that goes into it. You have to have a predicate offense. There's like a crime has to be committed first before you can get a warrant. And we've seen 3 different rumors on what exactly that predicate offense could be. One of them is the whatever salacious info on the Christopher Steele dossier. The second one is that Russian banks were making transactions from Trump Tower. And the third one is Papadopoulos getting drunk with a dude named Andrew Downer in London, talking about how the Russians were going to give him dirt on Hillary. None of those have been confirmed to be the actual source of how the warrant was pulled. I mean, you see on different articles, all 3 of them, they state that that's the origin, but none of them have been confirmed. So it's all kind of supposition at this point. But I don't know, it makes for good theater for me. I mean, it's kind of like watching high school among the politicians. I mean, they got me on the hype train. And if this sucker reads like an op-ed, then, I'm done with all the hype train stuff. But if it does come out and they're like, look, there's shit that we can prove if you declassify stuff, and this person did that, and this is it, and if you can't not confirm it, then we'll kind of know it to be true. But that's kind of where I stand on it. It's all a nice big old build up. It's crazy shit.
Yeah, and this is the bullshit that always gets me about all this kind of stuff, is that we're expected as citizens to be informed and to make informed decisions about, who we elect as our officials and our rulers, basically, as what they've become. And yet we have the most secretive government almost in all of history. And even when it comes down to something as innocuous as a memo with some bullet points on it as to where an investigation is going, that's not talking about actual findings or anything that should be kept secret or anything, but just talking about where this investigation is even at this point, and that's supposedly supposed to be kept secret from the people. But yet we're supposed to just believe all these allegations by nameless sources on all these on all these things about Russia and all this other kind of stuff. Of course they won't release any of that information either, and all that's kept secret. And yet you're supposed to only believe one side, never trust the other, and and it's supposedly only a one-way partisan game. And my solution would be get rid of all of that. Government shouldn't be keeping these secrets.
True, and God forbid the official story ever gets released decades later, then you can be passed off as a conspiracy theorist for believing it. That's another weird thing too, is like, you're crazy if you do believe the official story, and then you're crazy if you don't believe the official story. I don't know, it's definitely just like you said, you're the most secretive country in the whole world.
Yep, and God forbid you keep a secret from the government, but it's their job to keep secrets from you.
And I mean, like some aspects I can understand it. Like, for instance, when this memo was first authored, it definitely had, I guess, classified intel in there because it was subject to congressional review. And that's why, like, last week we heard, so many senators seen the memo and they're disgusted, and this many senators seen the memo. It's because they're slowly making it through Congress, like having to show them, and it goes up for a review. And that's another thing. What I don't get is where they're saying the Democrats wanted to release their own version of a memo, but they were voted down when technically their memo is supposed to be subject to the same review, but they refused to have it shown to anybody else. So that was something weird there. They didn't want to show the people that knew the classified intel, but they wanted desperately to show the rest of the world. So that to me was like, okay, another secret keeping bullshit,
Which that's kind of funny in and of itself. Like, oh yeah, you got a memo, well, we got a memo, it's even worse than your memo. Our memo could beat up your memo.
You can't come to my birthday. You are your memo.
Yeah, my dad can beat up your dad. It's like what this shit sounds like half the time.
Yeah, dude, I don't know, it's crazy. And then, of course, you could play the centrist, oh, you guys, that's cool too. And then me, I get roped into like, all right, well, fuck yeah, dude, I want to see it. I mean, come on. Hey, you're building this up so much. Like, you're talking about people are disgusted, and you're talking about lives are on the line, and people's jobs are on the line. And, the director of the FBI goes and reviews the memo, and the next day, McCabe is out. And that right there is like, all right, what the hell is on this memo to me? But instead, I mean, and that's another thing too, is it's all totally a hype train, because Trump can declassify it right now and show it to everybody. He has that power, but it kind of, like, to me, maybe he just doesn't want to, like, which he's totally partisan, and he's totally, like, one-sided, and he's busting out people on Twitter and stuff, but I don't know, it seems like he doesn't want to get that involved personally with it, and he wants to kind of let his own people, like, dig it out, because he's already being accused of getting involved, like asking McCabe what side he's on and all that stuff. So it kind of seems like maybe he's just trying to play the hands-off thing, even though I think if it's hellacious as, well, what's his name gets and Nunes claims it is, then release it right now. Why wait? Why hype it up? Why do all that stupid shit? I can't stand that hype stuff.
Yeah, I think for Trump, it is a smart play to just keep this story alive for as long as it goes, because while the press is focused on all this bullshit, it really doesn't matter either way. Look at the stuff that he gets to do in the background that they're not focusing on.
The attention's off his little hands.
Yep, the attention's off his little hands. He's still able to golf whenever he wants and everything like that, and he's still able to get China, Russia, all these other countries on the phone and try to work out his supposed deals with them and stuff, for better or for worse. And for right now, it actually looks like for better. We'll see how they go. One thing I want to talk about that we just scooted right past earlier, and didn't really touch last week, I don't think. So with the tax reform that's coming in, that's going to take effect, it's the 31st today, so what does it take effect tomorrow as we start being, under the new tax law. And so with that, businesses are now going to be at 21% is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's down from like 35 or 36% or something like that. That's big. I'm not going to downplay that is that's not a big move. But one thing I want to talk about with that, should businesses be taxed at all? And I would argue, no, not 1 cent. What do you think?
I mean, it sounds great. It sounds awesome in theory. You would do nothing but thrive. I mean, there's that kind of theory has been adopted with a few things, but it not so much with tax, but more so with like fines and like environmental terms, like revenue neutrality, where they'll go and impose like environmental infractions on people and say, hey, you did this and this, but when they go to do those fines or those regulations, they have a stipulation in there that makes sure it's revenue neutral, to where they're not damaging that private business as much as they could have been. So it's like nobody's getting hurt, but they do like get told like, hey, you got to fix this or you can't operate here, you're going to lose this. But I mean, I totally see what you're talking about. How else would you accrue? I know you're an anarchist. I know you are. So I can almost predict your answer. You essentially don't want a government, but how else would you suggest we collect taxes if not business?
Well, like, if the purpose of government is to, provide for its people, and businesses are the biggest way that we are a mostly capitalist society, that is the biggest way that we provide for our people, is that, we buy things that we need. And so any tax on business, one thing to, think about here, businesses don't pay taxes. It's not like the system that is a business feels the pain of the tax or anything. It just makes it so that the business has to raise its price. It's a line item on a business's expenses.
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, go up whenever taxes are raised or go down whenever they're dropped or whatever. And with whatever way it goes, that tax is passed on to the consumer through the price of the product. And so people are still paying the taxes. It's not the business, any way you go at it. And it seems, and I don't want to speak for, you know, any kind of people on the left wing or, you know, anything like that, but it seems like they propose these things and always propose these raises in these taxes to supposedly hurt the rich with the, you know, with the intent that, you know, it would get the money away from them and into the hands of the poor. But it just doesn't work that way. I mean, you give money to the government, that money is rarely going to the poor. It's going to other rich people or well-connected people for them to do with what they want to do instead of with what it would have gone to in the first place, which normally would have been to better the lives of people, either through more production of what the people actually want or through, you know, just more growth.
Totally agreed. Although I think I see it a little different as far as like the government's main modus operandi is like not so much as provide for the people, but defend the people and guarantee inter-party contracts, basically, and common defense and interstate jurisdiction. To me, it kind of seems like that's about the only thing we need any sort of controlling collective for, to me personally. And like it kind of rolls into what you said, like not so much provide for them, but provide them with the opportunity. And I kind of feel like that's what you were saying. And it kind of, like, to me, it seems like, I don't know, if they really wanted to help them, yeah, they would do a lot more revenue neutral stuff. And they, like the tax itself, I don't know if I can buy into not taxing businesses whatsoever, because I don't have the statistics in front of me right now, but I'm pretty sure like business tax makes up a huge chunk of the revenue. And I totally understand how it's inherited by the consumer and how like their tax essentially never changes should their prices raise. But I don't, like me personally, I don't know if I'm totally on board with excising it altogether. Even though I love it and I totally agree with it. I just maybe I need to think about it more and see, kind of feel out exactly what the implications would be, you know.
Well, it's just that we're taxing on the basis of income, is what these business taxes are. These corporate tax, they tax their profits, and so that is, you know, the first rule of economics is if you want less of something, tax it, and if you want more of something, you subsidize it. And you know, so if you're taxing income, whether it's the personal level or on businesses or what have you, you're basically making a statement that you want less of it. And who would want less business, less growth, less opportunity, you know, for people, and basically have it served on a platter of basically a punishment, you know, for being successful. And so a lot of people have suggested that we move to a consumption-based tax, which would basically be a sales tax, you know, and there would be even ways to exempt businesses from that, you know, but like the amount of stuff that is bought like far exceeds the amount of stuff that is just like earned, you know, so you'd get more money that way. It'd be like an easier way to collect taxes. It wouldn't require, I don't know how long our tax code is now, but it's in the thousands of pages and it's borderline incomprehensible. You can go to, it's gotten so bad, I've, you know, seen Consumer Reports on this, where tax season comes around, a reporter will go to like, you know, 5 different tax preparing services and get 5 different tax returns from each of them, because nobody can understand these things, no matter, you know, how smart they are. And it's just ridiculous that it can be that way.
And it's like it's written that way on purpose too, to purposely catch anybody they want and confuse everybody too. And I'm totally on board with just a strictly sales tax. I wonder exactly how that would play out if the revenue, you know, like would match up. But like I know yours and my concern wouldn't be our debt to income ratio, because you and I both, our solution I'm sure would be in unison, would be cut the damn spending, you know. But
Exactly.
and that's what it kind of seems like you said last episode, wagging the dog. It almost seems like, well, my daughter was super young and she thought she had a better way of changing her diaper, and she wanted us to hold our hand still with the wipe on it while she tried to wipe her ass all over our hands. You know, it kind of seems like that's what they're doing here. Is like, well, first, you know, we'll cut all the income, and then we'll force ourselves, you know, like to a trip. Like, all right, now you have to cut spending because nothing's coming in. You can't get blood from a stone, so you're gonna have to cut something somewhere. And I love that too, because it's almost like forcing them in a corner. It's like, all right, guys, you only have $3, and these 4 people need a hamburger. You know, I mean, it wouldn't be so much as like killing off a person in their analogy, but it would be killing off, you know, like bicycle lanes and mountains and all that bullshit. Have you ever been to that website YouCut, where they bring up like, I think 3 different things that is receiving federal spending, and they let you as a citizen vote whether or not it comes up into the House to cut that funding? And it's always like ridiculous stuff, of course, you know, like treadmills for shrimp. Like,
Yeah, I've never seen that, but I'll have to check that out. I'm sure a quick Google search will bring it right up. Yeah, but it is kind of ridiculous. And, you know, I've often thought, like, you know, if we're going to have a representative government, like, why bother with having the actual representatives, and then we just represent ourselves? And when you know, go to vote, you basically just fill out a check sheet of, like, what would you want your tax money spent on, and you know, gray out the boxes for whatever thing, you know. Like, somebody could go and put 100% of their taxes into firefighting, so, you know, if that would so compel them, you know, and then others could, you know, divvy it up however they want. And I think that would be an interesting way to try things. But, you know, then again, like, you know, what's to keep the spending from going out of control there if everybody checks, like, you know, well, you know, I want everything, or just that, well, let's see, that would technically have to be revenue neutral, doing it that way, wouldn't it? Because you could only allot your money. You couldn't allot somebody else's money.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're on to something here. Hope I don't get JFK just for thinking of that.
That's true, man. That's true. Because that's something I thought, like, in this day and age, with the technology we have, is there really a need for representatives? Like, do we need to be represented? Because that was the only way to consolidate a message. Like, all right, I represent these people, and it can be done faster if I speak in their name. And now, anymore, like, we could totally have a Facebook or a Reddit style setup, or, yeah, fuck, they voted for American Idol with, like, their cell phones, you know. Why can't, just like you said, all right, guys, we have a new spending thing coming up, and they do it in unions. If you don't want your dues to go to something, you can totally go to the Boy Scouts or the firemen, like you said, and give your dues there. And, like, what's stopping us from doing it that way? I think we'd cut a lot of fat. I mean, I don't know if,
yeah, definitely.
Like, say we may be more vulnerable to the tyranny of a majority, but I don't know. That's something cool to think about. Like, maybe we don't need them anymore with the way technology is.
At this point, I just wonder how it could be any worse than what we're getting right now. I mean, you know, we vote for these people, and they say that they are on our sides with, you know, whatever thing, and they're only on the side of, you know, at this point with our voting statistics, probably about a third of the people maybe actually voted for the people that get into whatever office. And then on top of that, you know, that third of the people aren't on board with every single thing this candidate has. Usually it's just 1 or 2 things that they've heard about, if they've even heard about anything. I mean, let's be honest here. A lot of people that vote are voting on one letter that is next to their name, and that's it.
Pretty much, dude. And if they're not voting on that, they're only semi-evolved into voting strictly on social issues, which is like, are you kidding me? You didn't consider nothing whatsoever when it came to foreign policy or this? It's just abortions and bathrooms? Jesus Christ, you know?
Well, and then even on the other side, I mean, you know, it's some people vote on just the economic issues, but where's the needle moved with that?
True.
Finally, one time after 20 years, we get a decent tax cut or whatever, but we're still getting all this. We're saving ourselves something here, but getting kicked in the side over here is basically what always ends up happening. And then on the war, we voted for the least warmongery president each time. Every single time in modern history, and yet we've gotten more war each time, except for the short period of time with Clinton. But he was still, kicking up dust over there in other countries as well. It's like we weren't non-interventionist during that point either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Clinton had Somalia, and yeah, he definitely had his own rounds. And it kind of seems like it's a slow-moving ratcheting effect that's almost comical too. Like, we'll have Bush Jr. and he'll go in there, or even Reagan. Reagan will, like, promise us the world in his campaigns. Like, guys, I'm for you, man. It's liberty or nothing, and it's this and that. And then he goes in there and talks to him and comes out and like, all right, guys, like, yeah, we're still cool. You just got to quit smoking weed, though. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
I had to. And then old Bush, Bush will come along and be like, all right, guys, I'm cool. Nothing's going to happen. Okay, guys, look, we're still cool, but you just got to watch what you're saying on the phone. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about, dude? Yeah, I know the terrorists are bad, but we got to watch this stuff with the Patriot Act. And then Obama will come out like, all right, guys, I'm for you. And then go in there and talk to people and come out, all right, guys, we're cool, but this habeas corpus shit is outdated. We need to get rid of that kind of stuff. Nobody needs a right to trial of their own peers or due process. That shit's old. It's like, wait, no, dude, no. It's definitely a nice little dramatic ratcheting effect it's funny when you put it that way, but it's like, damn, dude, what else? What next, man? My ass only has so much skin.
Yeah.
I don't know. What the hell is this world coming to, Mr. Chris?
That's right, man. It's burning us alive. On that note, thanks for listening, guys. This has been What Is This World Coming To? I'm Chris Riley. You can find me on Twitter at Chris Riley LCP. And I also have a show on the same network right now until we move to our own YouTube channel. It's the Lost Context Podcast, and we usually have those up on Tuesdays. So listen for that. You got anything to plug?
You can find me on Twitter at Vertigo31. That's about it.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.